Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Omega Wednesday night workshop. Glad you could all join us, and probably safer to be watching online than to have driven in the 120. Did we hit 120 today? Does anybody know? I saw 119 in my car, but no. Well, I saw 123 too. So anyway, thank you for all being here. I want to just do a quick little review that the next Omega 1 is going to be July 7th through the 9th. That's a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We have a start time that's going to be different. We start at 7 o'clock in the evening now. I guess I don't have to look at the camera the whole time. Sorry, guys. So we start at 7 in the evening on Friday nights now. So we switched it to half hour later. Seems to be a little bit more workable for that. And then, of course, the next Monday night workshop that we do have on the books is July 3rd. We're going to confirm that, but I'm pretty sure it's July 3rd, so I know a lot of people are probably going to be out of town doing a 4th of July weekend since it's an extended weekend, because 4th of July is on Tuesday. But that's the two things that we have on the schedule, and then the July Wednesday night workshop would be, someone's going to look at that date for me, but that'll be coming up the 3rd, or is it the 4th Wednesday? Check the website. It'll be on the website. So I don't have topics for those yet. Hopefully I will have them by the end of this week, and I'd like to get the newsletter out a little bit earlier than what I had for this one. So this is June, right? We're in June. Okay.
19th.
July 19th. Wednesday, July 19th will be our next Wednesday workshop. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you all for being here, for trudging through the hot weather. Make sure you drink water. I'm going to keep saying that. Drink water. So tonight's topic is overcoming second forces. How many people here have already heard me talk about first force, second force? All right, so half of you. Okay, that's not bad. So first force, second force, the concept is anytime I try to do something, there always appears to be a second force to combat me or prevent me from accomplishing my task. Science actually has I think it's called a theory, but for every force, there's an equal and opposite force. So every time you try to do something, there's always going to be something to push back on what we're doing. That's what's called the second force. Hermes Trismegistus, often claimed as the father of ageless wisdom teaching, lived back in 400 AD, I think, in Egypt. He taught this, first force, second force. The concept of becoming aware of the first force, second force is, if we understand second force, we actually could use it to our advantage. For example, an airplane uses the second force every time it takes off. Now, for those of us who've been in Phoenix, you know that our aircrafts have been grounded for 2 days because it's so hot. The air is too thin for the aircraft to have lift. Typically, an airplane takes off into the wind. The wind is coming at the aircraft. So what this presents is first force, second force. So the first force is the aircraft going in one direction. Second force is the wind coming at that opposite direction. And when the two collide, we end up with lift. Not just because they collide, but because of the wings. The wings are designed in such a fashion that when the air hits it, it elevates the plane. So this is how we can have a piece of metal, humongous, in the air flying, as if it had no gravity effect at all. Because we understand the forces coming at us. So here, the aircraft engineers used second force to produce lift of an aircraft. That's a good example of when we have second force and we understand it, we can use it to our advantage. Unfortunately, most of the second force that we encounter, we don't understand or we're unaware of as it begins. So, have a couple examples of some common second forces, things that we encounter on our second forces. So the first thing is, way back when I was a young kid, not young, but when I first came to Arizona, before smartphones came in, I was planning a picnic. And I went out and got all the supplies, I got everything ready, and the day of the picnic, it rained. So that's second force. We can call the weather. The weather can be second force. It could be also tornadoes, hurricanes, tidal waves, tsunamis. All of those we can cluster into the weather of being a second force on us. The second one is, when I was in my 20s, I was standing on a dock and I wasn't really paying attention, and I just come off of working a midnight shift. I had taken a summer job at FedEx or something, I don't remember what it was, and I was standing on the dock, and I was a little tired, and I was at the edge of the dock, waiting for my friends to get into the boat, and I was going to climb down the ladder. So I was off of a lake up in upstate New York in Rochester. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I can't remember the name of the lake. It's one of the 5 lakes. Anyway, no, that's further north. So anyway, I was not holding on to the ladder. I was standing there holding on to, I think I had a hot chocolate with me, and I fell. And I think I just was tired and I wasn't paying attention and I fell. And it was about a 12-foot drop. And when I landed in the boat on the, so there's the edge and the seat. One foot landed on at the back edge of the boat and the other one landed on the seat. So I hit it and bounced and fell back. Now, everybody that was down there thought I jumped, because that's the thing I would have done. But no, I fell. I really fell, and it was very, very painful. I actually severely sprained my left ankle, and I broke my right ankle. The one that landed on the hard plastic broke, and the other one was severely sprained. So now I can't work because I can't walk. Sitting there with my feet up in the air for 3 weeks or something like that. It was kind of funny. Not really. It was very painful. But that second force, we can call personal. That I could be a second force when I do something unconscious or I'm not aware of what I'm doing. Have you ever done that? You drive and you turn the wrong way because you're not paying attention? That would be considered second force. The next thing I thought of is one of the first times I had a car and I was driving and I ran over a nail in the road and had a flat tire. I didn't know nails could puncture a tire. And I wasn't driving in a very safe area as well. It was like a construction zone, and I was just taking my car out there. And so I had a flat tire. That could be elements now. We could say it's actual physical obstacles could be my second force. I could actually have a physical obstacle show up and not a tree could fall down. Boom. It's a second force. I can't move forward because there's something stopping me along the way. This is one of my favorite second forces. For those of you who were around at this time when I got married, my family was a half hour late. So I couldn't proceed until they showed up. Not something I enjoyed. But family oftentimes is one of the biggest second forces that we encounter, which I'll get to in a little bit. But family is a big second force for a lot of people. We are influenced and affected by our family a great deal. And the last one I had was the very first time I bought a car. The very first time I bought a car, I was working right out of college, working part-time jobs while I was looking for a job, and I was working at I think it was a factory. I was working at a manufacturing factory for plastic gears. And it was a third shift job as well. I don't know why I keep doing third shift jobs, but it was a third shift job. And I had gotten off, and I went down with my boyfriend at the time, and we went and bought a car. So I bought my very first car on a Friday. I went into work the next day on Monday, and I was fired. So here I now have this big car payment, and I have no job, and I'm stuck in the middle. Anyway, so that was second force. I'm going to use that for work. Sometimes work can be our second force. If you have a supervisor or a boss walk up to you and say, oh, by the way, you can't leave, I need this report done. I forgot to tell you. Or, you need to leave, before you leave, you need to answer all your emails or something like that. So work, the corporate world, or our work, can be a second force as well. So these are just very simple examples of common second forces. Most of the time we're unaware of it. If we're prepared, it'd be easy to overcome them. Not a big deal. I want to talk about a little bit more, being prepared. Let me talk about that for a moment. So the first example that I use for planning for a picnic, now of course we have the Weather Channel. You could just go on the app and you could check and you know what the weather pretty much is going to be. So it's not too often that we're caught by surprise, with the exception of naturally the tsunami that catches everybody surprised, earthquakes. You can't predict those. Tornadoes, we can't predict those. But for the most part, we can be a little bit more prepared when it comes to planning and dealing with our weather. For example, we're in 120, so everyone knows, stay inside as much as you can. I saw a really good news report last night where they were talking about the air conditioning in Phoenix, so never move your air conditioner more than 2 degrees So that's not fighting to have to re-cool things down. So a 2 degree variance is what's important. Of course, drinking plenty of water. So that's something we can prepare for. We know it's going to be hot. I looked online and it looked like we're going to be in the 118, 17 until Tuesday. So we can prepare for that. So that's one thing we can do. Of course, when I fell off the dock, the other thing would be now be aware of my surroundings. If I know I'm very tired, I should hold on to the ladder and not think I don't need any help or support. I really was at the very edge. I shouldn't have been at the very edge. I just happened to be looking down and I wanted to see what they were doing on the boat. And then I looked up and then I just lost my balance and fell. So being aware of my surroundings is very helpful. Now, any woman who's ever taken a defense class, that's the number one thing they say is always be aware of your surroundings. When you're walking into a garage, make sure you know where the exits are. Don't walk into a garage by yourself if you can not do that. But make sure you know where your surroundings are. Know where the exits are. Know where you parked your car. Always have your keys in your hand so that it minimizes less. I saw this thing yesterday. I was so moved by this. An engineer had created, it's like a little button, but it's an alert. You know when you press a panic button and it goes beep, beep, beep? Well, it's a little button that you can put on your purse now. They talked about abductees, and they showed a video of a 7-year-old girl in Walmart. She's walking, and a guy comes right behind her and grabs her and tries to take her. Her mother was 2 aisles away. I mean, she just happened to just walk in the aisle, and she was just going to walk down, and he just grabbed her. She turned around and started kicking him and screaming, and he let go, and then she ran away. And so that encouraged the guy to develop this little panic button now that women, or anybody, children, can have with them. It's really, really loud. The decimals are much louder than a motorcycle, and the screeching pierce. It's a really screeching, piercing sound. I think that's very wonderful to have that. But anyway, that would be prepared for second force to make sure something's not going to happen, especially if you're unaware of your surroundings. And then, of course, getting the flat tire with the nail. Being aware of your surroundings as well. Obviously, you can't drive on places with sharp objects and think you're not going to get a flat tire. Anyone who's ever ridden a bike in Phoenix on the canals, if you don't have slime in your tire, you're going to have a flat tire because the canals are always full of stuff. Those of you who don't know what slime is, it's that green stuff that you put in the tire that in case you do get a flat tire, it doesn't flatten. It stays full. Love slime. Don't slime me. I just love slime. So you can prevent things like that, being aware of your surroundings, and also, of course, having a dummy tire, a spare tire in the back, and a tire iron, and know how to use them would be beneficial, because the first time I pulled out the tire iron, I'm like, what the heck am I supposed to do with this? And how do I get the lift thingy to lift my car up? So it was, I remember actually the first time I changed the tire, I was on the freeway, and I got a flat tire, and I cranked what is the thing called? Jack, thank you. I cranked the jack up, and then I tried to loosen the lug nuts while the tire was not on the ground. So the tire just kept spinning with me. And then I realized, oh, the tire's got to be on the ground for me to loosen the lug nuts. So I had to lower the jack. Then I did the tire iron, and then I lifted it. It was actually very funny. Some man came and rescued me. It's probably a good thing. Damsel in distress. What do you do with this? I'm kidding. So being prepared for that. Then, of course, my favorite, my family being late. I could have easily avoided this. I know my family has a history of being late. There's a record of it. I could have easily given them the wrong time. I could have said to them, be here at 12 instead of 1. Easily. I could have lied and told them to show up earlier. My brother always says, I'm not a liar. I'm not a good liar. You could always tell if I'm lying. I'm not. I don't lie. So it's not hard of me to want to lie. But in that instance, I could have done it and prevented everything else that unfolded from that. So being prepared when you know your family, that's something that we can do to help. If you know the different types of belief systems and behaviors that your family has, we can avoid that. Don't bring up specific topics. If your family has one particular favorite political side, we stay away from politics. If your family has one particular outcast, we don't talk about the outcast. Like, you really do your best to try to keep the peace. So that would be for the family. And then, of course, the buying the new car and then getting fired the next day. that one could have easily handled by me checking my performance. I could have easily asked my supervisor, how am I doing? How's it going? I never asked for feedback. I just assumed I'd have this job, and who knows? I mean, in my head, I was like, oh, they're downsizing. They weren't. I just wasn't really good at it. So that's how I could take care of being prepared for the easy second forces. But now I want to talk about second forces that aren't easy, the ones that shock us. Every once in a while, we have a second force that totally throws us on our head. We're flipped around and don't know, whoa, what just happened. So the first one is embezzlement. If anybody's ever had this experience of embezzlement, embezzlement means somebody stealing money. And it's usually someone you know, a coworker, a boss, a family member. It could be embezzlement. I knew people whose son was a drug addict, and he'd go through the house and rifle and take everything he could find, and then he started taking stuff to steal and to sell at the pawn shop to make money. So embezzlement is shocking. You don't expect it, and when you first discover it, there's denial. You're like, no, he wouldn't do something like that. Of course not. And then their anger comes into play. So this is a shocking thing. Embezzlement also deals with emotions. We take it personal because somebody we know. So we emotionally get affected and attacked. We feel attacked, like they did this personally to me. So embezzlement is the first one. The shocks are the hardest ones. The second one is betrayal, and this is what I mean by throwing somebody under the bus. If you're working side by side with someone and something happens, and all of a sudden they say, no, Anne Marie did it. What are you talking about? So when you get thrown under the bus, again, another shock. Like, this is your coworker and you're working together. What are you talking about? Getting thrown under the bus is very heartbreaking because, first of all, you have to deal with the issue that happened when it really wasn't your fault. And then you have the issue of the person who threw you under the bus who you thought you were working together with. So you have a double whammy. So you're having to deal with repairing whatever it is at the workforce, and then with the person who threw you under the bus. And trust is gone. Embezzlement, trust is gone as well. So there's a theme here. The third one, the sudden death of a loved one. Car accident, the little kid who just got sucked up by the storm that's in Georgia, I think it was. He's a teenager who just got, it was the first casualty of, what's the storm being called, Carrie? Cindy. So there's one death so far, and he was a teenager. Unexpected, just boom, gone. So when we have an unexpected death of a loved one, an emotional reaction, it's a shock. People walk around for days, like in a daze. Like what happened, denial, of course, comes into play as well. And some people never fully recover from that. Some people never fully recover. When you have, I knew somebody whose daughter committed suicide. How do you explain that? I have a client whose child stillborn, or I'm sorry, his child lived for 20 minutes and then died. You know, you're not prepared for that. So, you know, have all this joy for having a brand new baby and all of a sudden dead. So it's really shocking and take the wind out of us. And as I said, some people never fully recover from that one. The next one is burglary. Now, I'm not just talking about in the house or having your car, and I've had several cars stolen, but identity theft as well. That's on the rise. It's actually the blue-collar highest one right now is identity theft. A lot of gang members are going to computers. That's their theft right now. So not so much, I mean, they still steal, but more on the internet. It's so much easier to do. I'm actually quite shocked with this when it comes to identity theft or any kind of theft. Our society has gotten used to it. It's almost like the norm. The last time I had a car stolen, the cop said, yeah, we'll write a report, but don't worry about it. We're not going to come out. Okay, you know, just call your insurance company and tell them. Okay, and I did. I just called the insurance company, and my insurance agent was, okay, don't worry about it. Just go get a car. And, you know, you got coverage for that, so just go get a car. And I was like, and yeah, don't worry about it. It'll be fine. Like it's acceptable. Or, of course, if anybody's ever had this where somebody took money out of your bank account, and you call the bank and tell them that wasn't my charge, okay, don't worry about it. And they just put the money back into your account. Like, somebody just took $2,000. That's okay, we got it. And they put it back in your account. So it's almost like it's okay that the bank is just going to replace it. Very strange. I find that to be very strange. Like, wouldn't you want to hold people accountable? But okay, I'm not putting bad karma out there for all you people who do steal these things. Don't attack me. I did know a friend of mine, she did have her identity stolen when she was in college. It took her almost, I'm going to guess if I remember this correctly, almost 3 years to get everything cleaned up. Because some of them, once they have your ID and your social, gone. I mean, they can buy a house, buy a car. It's amazing. I remember one time when George was in the rehabilitation center, he had broken his hip, had a hip surgery, and so he was in a rehab center. And so when I came in, I put his wallet down, and I'm loading all his stuff up in his little closet, because I'm thinking he's going to be out of there soon. Well, somebody there had grabbed his card, and this was the amazing thing. The bank lady actually explained this to me. They have machines now that all you do is swipe the card, and all the information goes back onto that machine, and they can give it back to you. Now, this is back about 7 years ago. Now, they don't even need that. They just have a reader. They just walk by and just read whatever your stuff is, and all the electronic information goes right onto their reader. So they don't even need a card anymore. They could just purchase, you know, if you're online, you could just purchase things without actually showing the card. Our society cracks me up on how much we're out of control on certain things, but it's acceptable. And then the last one is adultery. Those people who've experienced adultery, shocking, just shocking. Now, counselors say sometimes you should be aware of it or you can pick up signs, but when you're in it, you're not. You think everything's just hunky-dory, and all of a sudden one day they come home and say, I'm leaving you. I found somebody else. What? So that a heartbreak is very emotionally attached as well. And the trust level goes down. So with the burglary, trust level goes down as well. People get security systems. We pay a little bit more attention to what we're doing. The trust with the sudden death, this is the hard one to understand, but our trust level does go down now. If there was a car accident and your loved one dies in the car accident, you don't want to be on the freeway anymore, especially if you were in the car with them. You're terrified. You don't trust any other driver. Don't even want to be it. People who have survived plane crashes, hard time to get back in a plane. So the trust factor goes down. So when it's an emotional shock, we lose our trust, and our emotion tears us apart where we lose our center. So this second force is a lot harder to overcome. And how can we possibly prepare for that? How do you prepare for the sudden death of an individual? How do you prepare for an embezzlement? How do you prepare for betrayal or burglary? We can't, or theft. That's something we really can't prepare for. Those are the things that, not wanting to be mystical, but those are the things life hands us. I don't know if the grand plan over there and the karma is, okay, you know, on May 27th, this is going to happen to you, and on September 18th, this is, I don't know if that's out there, but I do know events happen to people. And sometimes when an event happens, we get strength from it, and sometimes we don't. So that's the thing I wanted to introduce today, was the idea of how to gain strength from the second forces and how to possibly deal with them so they don't have as much impact on us as we allow them to. Now, sometimes the second force could be something as simple as a person talking about you and you hear about it. Then you get all upset. Oh, who do you think you are? And we get all angry, and then we're consumed by it. I've had lots of experience, of, not me personally, but dealing with clients, with people who are, he said this and he said, and an hour later, they're still saying the same story. 3 months later, they're still saying the same story. So when something like that occurs, it was shocking at first, they haven't let it go yet, naturally, and they haven't learned anything from it. I'm a big believer in finding the value in things. We should always look for value. If it exists, there's value. George used to say that all the time. So when something occurs, my job would be to find the value in it. Rather than go, and panic, find the value. Do you remember when you were a child and the first time you learned how to ride a bike, how many people learned how to ride a bike as soon as you got on the bike? You did. Put your hands down. Did most people struggle to fall? Like the wheel?
No, I had no trouble falling.
You're right. Most of us fell. But we struggle with gravity. We struggled a little bit with our alignment and make sure that we're on the wheels. And most of the time, we panicked and made it worse. We're like, ah! And then we fall because we're wigging with the wheel and stuff. Eventually, we got to a point where it didn't affect us anymore, that it was a big deal. Now, I grew up with training wheels. That was so much easier. You had the training wheels on. But here's the thing. As soon as my dad took the training wheels off, I knew the training wheels weren't there anymore. nothing changed. I mean, I just knew that he had made it so the training wheels were up a little bit more, so I wasn't falling. I wasn't leaning on the wheels anymore. So I really didn't need them. But as soon as he took the training wheels off, and I knew I fell, and it took me a while to get the hang of it, because in my head, I made it worse than what I really was capable of doing. Sometimes that's what we combat as well with the second force, my brain. I make it worse. I create the story in my head and I amplify it rather than what really happened. I just go, and I catastrophize sometimes when the second force occurs. So my job would be to be understanding the second forces. Now the ones that really rattle us, those have to do with emotions. When we add emotion to a second force, we're going to be drained. We're exhausted, we're lost, we're dazed, we're confused, we don't know what just happened. And then we get angry and vengeful and denial and negotiation. All of those things come into play when we add emotion to it. So if we could master our emotions, that would be delightful. I haven't met anybody yet who's managed to do that, but mastering my emotions would be the number one key to help me overcome my my second forces. I also was puttering around and thinking, is there any way that we could actually come up with a cause for the second force? Like, what causes second force to happen? So my first thought was the 7 deadly sins. They have to have some kind of impact on why we deal with second forces, especially in the first collection of things. So I did. I went and looked at the 7 deadly sins. The first one is lust. That's adultery. Wouldn't that be a 7 deadly sin? Lust. That leads me to adultery. The next one is gluttony. So gluttony, those are like the hoarders. And if you've ever seen the Hoarder show on TV, has anybody ever seen that show? The worst person and the biggest second force in the show is the hoarder. They don't want to let anything go. They're out there in the pile of things to go, and they're picking things back up saying, no, I need this, no, I need this, no, I need this. So they're the second force. So a hoarder actually becomes the second force, which is funny. The third one is greed, embezzlement. So that supports the embezzlement one. Sloth, I really couldn't figure out what to do with sloth. Sloth is laziness and disinterest and not really engaging. And I thought maybe you could tie this to burglary. They don't really care that they're hurting people and they're detached. Maybe. I'm not really sure about on the sloth for a second force. It could also be sloth prevents me from being aware of my surroundings. I'm in a rush, I don't care, I'm not paying attention. So it could come to that. Then wrath, that's the next one. That's anger, obviously. Wrath, this goes to the subtle emotional outburst. Have you ever had that from family members? All of a sudden, wah! And you stand there and go, what just happened? That's what we like to call in the classroom the stack attack. Things build up and build up and build up and build up, and finally, boom, the straw that breaks the camel back. So that would be wrath. It's anger and it's sudden emotional outburst. When that comes at you and you're not prepared, it rattles you, just rattles you. As a parent, when our children throw their temper tantrums, it's hard for me not to laugh because it's kind of funny watching them. You just go, what are you doing? And then you realize, oh, they really are upset. Oh, sorry, honey. I think I've told this story before. I'll tell it again. It's really cute. I have one granddaughter. One time my kids are at the house, and all of a sudden my one granddaughter's in the corner with her back towards us, and she's crying, and I asked my daughter, why is she in the corner? She said she's upset. She knows she's going to get in trouble, so she put herself in the corner already. I was like, that's advanced thinking. But when we're prepared for it, it doesn't bother us. Oh, yeah, okay, are you done crying yet, honey? We're ready to have ice cream. Let's go. And that's one thing I really did learn when you're dealing with kids who are throwing temper tantrums. If you don't feed into it, they stop because they don't have your attention anymore. I used to do with my one granddaughter, she'd go and stick her lip out. I'm like, no, you can make your lip bigger. Come on, make it bigger. And I'd just stop making fun of me. I'm like, well, stop sticking your lip out. And we'd just go back, and then she'd start cracking up, and naturally, so she had no hold over me. Anybody who throws a temper tantrum, I really think it's funny when you see it. It's sad when you see it in adults. But it is still a little bit funny. So anyway, that's wrath. Then there's envy. Envy is another of the deadly sins. And on this one, again, I had a little bit of struggle with it. Burglary could go with it because you envy what somebody else has. So that would go there. And then pride. Pride's the last one. That's throwing somebody under the bus. It's all vanity. It's all about you. You don't care what anybody else looks like. So I thought, wow, the 7 deadly sins actually could be a source of second force. If we are with people who are engaged in the 7 deadly sins, we most likely will experience second force from them. Now, of course, you don't want to walk around, you're a second force, you're a second force. That's not what we do. But there is a way to combat this. So if I know that the 7 deadly sins would be something that could cause a second force, again, barring the shocking ones, I'm talking about the common second forces that we have. I don't think any of these 7 deadly sins supports hurricanes and tornadoes and whatnot. But the thing that they talk about, the way you can counter us, if you happen to know, there's the 7 virtues. The 7 virtues are there to counterbalance the 7 deadly sins. So I thought, well, let me look at this. If we have the 7 virtues and lust, and by the way, the 7 deadly sins are listed in from the lowest to the most detrimental. Lust is the lowest one, which I found intriguing. I thought sloth would be the lowest one. It's lazy, but it's not. So lust is the lowest one, and of course we said excessive desire, sexual desire, that's lust, and that leads to adultery. The opposite of that is chastity, purity. Now, it doesn't mean abstinence. That's not going to help, but it does mean being pure. Pure mind, pure heart, to make sure my actions are pure, to make sure that I'm not intending to harm anybody, that I don't judge people. All of that would be a sense of purity. Then we have gluttony, which is the overindulgence. The opposite of that is temperance, which is self-restraint. So temperance, temper. So I monitor. It's not too hot, like temperate. It's not too hot and not too cold. It's in the middle. That's what temperance would be. So to avoid gluttony, I'd make sure, I don't have 4 desserts. 1 is fine. That's what I would do. Not have to have it all because it's right in front of me. Do you remember the first time you ever got to a candy store and you had like $5 or $10 and you could do whatever you want with it? And what do we typically do? Spend the whole $10. And we eat it all, right? Like as soon as we can, it's in our mouth, and then we're sick. But that's what we typically do. When we first are set free, get whatever we want. So, naturally, temperance would be very important in that self-restraint as well. Then greed. I forgot to look this word up. Greed, they use the word avarice. Does anybody know what that means?
Yes.
What?
It's King Midas with the gold. It's avarice. He's just,
showing it off and collecting it and needs more.
No, not showing it off, loving it.
Loving it. Okay, loving the money.
Yes.
And his wealth. Okay, loving the wealth. Thank you, sir. So, envy, I'm sorry, that was, where was I? Greed. The opposite of that is charity, which is giving. So the balancing of the greed would be my giving aspect of that. So instead of me getting, then I want to give. I always like the idea of the rhythm of life. Hermes talks about the balances that we have, and one of them is vibration, rhythm. And so the rhythm is the in and out, the ebb and flow. So our body is a natural example of that. The blood comes into the heart and goes out of the heart. The air comes into our lungs and goes out of the lungs. It's a nice balance. Again, this goes back to temperance. You can't take in more than you exhale, and you can't exhale more than you inhale. So that's a good example of balance is what it comes down to. Then we have sloth, which is laziness, naturally. And the opposite, the thing that you could do to combat that, is diligence. Diligence, which really comes down to integrity. So if you're slothful, I don't feel like doing it today, I'm tired. Everybody who's ever had a teenager, that's what you hear. I'm tired, I don't want to, can I do it later? That's slothfulness. Diligence and integrity, that's where, no, you said you're going to do it now. It's going to take you 5 seconds. Just do it now. It doesn't take you that long to clean up your room. Just clean up your room. How many times do we say that to our children? Clean up your room. Clean up your room. Can you please clean up your room? Can you please clean up your room? No matter how many pleases you put out there. Can I do it later? So there's integrity. And then we have wrath, which is the anger aspect of it. The opposite of anger is forgiveness. I found this very curious, forgiveness. So anger, what causes us to be angry? The number one reason why. You're thinking. Most of the time we get angry because things aren't done the way we want them to be done. So we get angry about it. You said something I didn't want you to say. You did something I don't appreciate that you did. So we take it a personal offense. So anger, directly connected to an emotion. We get angry because you're not performing the way I want you to perform. I don't have any control over you, so we get angry. Again, everyone who's ever had a child, a teenager, we get angry because we can't control them. Because they're a teenager, they're going to do what they want to do. Just as our parents got angry with us because we were teenagers. So the idea of the opposite of that is forgiveness and composure. So composure comes into play. If I maintain my composure, I don't need to be angry. If you do something and it's not something I like, I can be composed and say, hey, that's all right, that's what you've decided to do, okay. How do I proceed forward? So composure is important. Torquem Saraydarium had a list of virtues that he used. The virtues were high vibration words, and if we use these words in our actions and in our vocabulary, the idea was it would help elevate our own vibration. And he had one virtue, it's number 7, stability. So stability is the ability to sustain any feeling or state of being. No matter what's happening around me, I can remain stable. Lightning and thunder, I can remain stable. Screaming and yelling, I can remain stable. That's the idea of stability. That's what a lot of monks practice, the art of maintaining inner peace. That nothing is going to bother me. That I have inner peace, I'm a rock. Doesn't matter what you say or do, I have inner peace. That's what composure comes down to. It connects to the idea of forgiveness, meaning I forgive you even if you've offended me. I still forgive you. That's how those two tie together. Then we have envy, which of course is jealousy, and the opposite of that would be kindness or admiration. So instead of being jealous of what somebody has or of what somebody else does, I can admire them. And through the art of admiration, I can actually become better myself. Wow, they have that? I really like that. I think I'll try for something like that. This is where we have heroes, people who inspire us. Role models are big. Do you remember when Charles Barkley played for the Phoenix Suns? And he had that one commercial that said, I am not a role model. I mean, he flat out said, I am not a role model. I think that was very smart of him because he knew his actions were not something that the children should not be emulating. And he isn't going to change. I mean, I thought that was very honest and very smart of him to come across that. And I think the rest of the ad had something to do with parents should be taking care of their children more than sports figures. Like your kids shouldn't be looking to the sports figures. They should be looking to their immediate community. So that's what admiration can lead us to. If we have somebody in our family, a lot of my clients are inspired by their parents or somebody with a really good solid work ethic. There's somebody you can hang on to and go, yeah, if they can do it, I can do it. So that's what admiration comes to. You don't really want to have the admiration of, I'm going to be a Bill Gates. If you've never worked on a computer before, you're setting yourself up for failure. That's not going to happen. But if you are working and striving towards that, hey, anyone can grasp the golden ring here in the United States. And the last one is pride, which deals with vanity. So pride and vanity, the opposite of that is humility. Practicing being humble. So vanity is all about me. It's the ego, look at me, look how important I am, look how wonderful I am, look how funny I am. It's all about me. Humility has nothing to do with me. It's the art of being in service, silent service. It's the one that the shadows, nobody sees you, but you're the underlying current. That's humility. It's hard for human beings to practice humility. We like the limelight, we like the attention, we like the accolades, we like somebody knowing what we did. I mean, it's not a bad thing to a limit. I think an ego is very healthy for us. If we have a healthy ego, it can help us strive forward. An unhealthy ego, unfortunately, will lead us towards vanity and pride. It's all about me and vanity. And of course, this is the type of individual who can throw somebody under the bus because it's more important to them that they look good than a friendship, which is amazing. Now, I will say this, I've experienced all of these as a child. I kept thinking about this. Well, not lust sexual desire, but I really did lust after chocolate a lot when I was a kid. So, and that tied right into gluttony because I didn't share my chocolate. It was mine and you weren't getting it. And then, of course, greed came into play once I started learning about money, and I don't want to share my money, and not even money. I mean, I would get greedy about Fruit Loops. get your hand out of my box of Fruit Loops. A friend of mine used to laugh. She'd say, when you come to my office and you open up one of the drawers, there's like 3 boxes of cereal. I would have Fruit Loops, Honey Nut Cheerios, and I think Captain Crunch, thank you. Okay, so sometimes I still have that, but but you weren't allowed to put your hand on it. No, you can't have any. That's my cereal. And so for me to have roommates, the first time I had roommates, I went nuts. Isn't that who ate my cereal? I mean, I'm really big on cereal. And so if I have roommates eating my cereal, it causes tension in the house. So greed, I'm very greedy about my stuff. And I'm also a very organized person, so if you take a DVD, put it back where you got it in alphabetical order, please, so that I can find it. Never happens. So that stuff, or my towels, I think that's just a personal thing, but I don't want you rubbing yourself in my towel. It's mine. Winnie the Pooh is mine. Don't touch the Winnie the Pooh towels. Thank you, Linda. I appreciate that. And then, of course, you know, my stuff, my cameras, anything that I own that I bought, I'm very trepidatious about letting someone else use it because I've had the experience. It never comes back the way I give it to them. So my first experience, love my stepchildren, I really do, but my first experience when I came into the house was I would, you know, give stuff to my stepdaughter. It'd never come back, or if it did, it would be damaged. Not too often damaged. The missing ones never come back. So I gave her one time my favorite cooler bag. You know, you put lunch in it. You know, it's a pretty purple one with little flowers and everything. I loved it, and I gave it to her. Have not seen it since. That was when she was in 7th grade. She's a senior now. Just saying. So that's the stuff I get greedy about. It's because I feel like I earned it. I bought it. It's mine. So that's the one thing I know I deal with a lot. So I have a tendency when I go to the store, I buy 2 boxes of cereal. One I hide and one I leave in the pantry. Not a lie. Those of you who remember when we staffed in Omega many, many years ago, I used to eat the Oreo cookies. They made these chocolate fudge-covered Oreo cookies. If you remember them, they were fudge-covered Oreo cookies. I would buy 2 boxes to come to the staffing. Everyone would always bring in food and everything. I'd buy 2 boxes. One was mine, and the rest was the staff's. I'm not kidding. My name was written on it, and everyone know you don't touch that box. It was very funny.
I'm glad she got over her thing about chocolate.
No, I never did. So that was my gluttony and greed. And then the slothfulness, the laziness. I have experienced this at times when I don't want to say really laziness, but I get distracted. And I know I've talked to you guys about this before. Like sometimes I just need a distraction, so I'll watch TV, binge watching. Or I'll play a game of solitaire on my phone, and that'll turn into an hour or 2 because I have 50 games of solitaire. But sometimes I just need that distraction where I don't want to do anything. I really don't want to. It's like downtime for me. So that's the kind of it. I actually get very agitated if I'm not doing something. I'm terrible on vacations. I can't just sit on the beach. I have to do something. So sloth is the one I don't really identify with the most in my life, but I have had those times. Wrath and anger, oh yeah, I've experienced the anger from me. I remember one time I had a boss that was just, how do I say this? A very good opportunity for me to practice my skills. How's that? And he was yelling at me, and I lost it. And I started yelling at him. And you know how when people say the phrase, you see red? I did. I was surprised, but I saw red, and it came up from the bottom and went up to the top. And somebody explained to me it was my blood vessels in my eyes, but I was red, and I walked away. I lost my voice because I yelled so loud at this gentleman, but I had anger. That was probably the most angry I've ever been, and have never reached that peak. But he was pushing me. I mean, he literally was pushing me and pushing me and pushing me, and I had it. I just had it and just went after him. Completely and totally unprofessional. I was like 26 years old or something like that. No control whatsoever. It was before I got to Omega. So 25, I think, or 24. Just went nuts on this guy. Well, he went nuts on me. The 2 of us were just screaming and yelling, and I just walked away. And I remember feeling that shaking. You know, if you've ever been to that place and you can't stop shaking. And I remember I couldn't see, So I went red and I couldn't see, and I turned and I knew where the door was, so I put my hand on the door frame and just counted 3 steps because I knew 3 steps would get me out, and then I turned right because I knew if I turned right I'd be going down a hallway, and I just kept going until my sight started to come back down, but I was shaking like a leaf. So I've experienced extreme wrath. The envy and the jealousy, oh yeah, I've had that. Excuse me, that's the other one I haven't really had too much experience with. I don't really get jealous, and I don't really envy people. I just don't think that's one I really identify with. I'm more grateful. I think I lean more towards gratitude than I do with everything. I can't, do you think, Mark, I have any envy? I can't think of anything. It's not one I identify with. It's the one I really don't identify with, I would say that. But the last one, pride, throwing somebody under the bus. When I was a little girl and I didn't know how to be friends, and if somebody was picking on one of my friends, I joined the other side and would pick on them. So I totally would just, I had no sense of friendship or understanding of what friendship meant. So I would just, throw them under the bus too, just so I wasn't getting picked on, which always came back and bit me, because then that person ends up being popular, and then everything goes out the window. So I have had these experiences in my life, and again, dealing with them with the second force, I think they can connect to the second force a little bit. So my summation then would be, how do I triumph over the second force? What are some things that I can do to help me deal with the second force, whether it's a common one or shock? There's got to be some things that I can do to prepare myself. I came up with a list of 7 things. 7 things that I actually do practice. So I figured, this isn't in any book anywhere, this is just the things that I do that I've been working on dealing with second force. So the first and number 1, remove the emotion. If you don't remove emotion, you're going to take it personal, you're going to get involved and get aggressive, and you're actually going to make it worse. So you have to remove the emotion. Now this is the hardest thing. If you don't have a handle on your emotion, it goes so quickly. And then it goes right to your head, and you start thinking and building and creating stories, and then you start believing those stories, and it spirals out of control. So to remove the emotion, number 1 thing, it's the most important thing. How you can do this, there's techniques that you can do. My number 1 thing, though, is call somebody. Call someone to ground you. Call a friend, call a loved one, talk to somebody. Talk you through it so you get the emotion out. And sometimes it's good to let it out. Gestalt uses the idea of talking to an empty chair. A batonka, if you've ever seen these things, they're the foam rubber bats. Just beat the bleep out of things. Beat a pillow. I mean, those are ways to get the emotion out, but they're safe ways to release the emotion. But that's the most important thing. If you let that emotion go, you're going to struggle with the second force. So remove your emotion is number 1. Number 2, don't take it personal. It's not about you. The person did the embezzling, they weren't embezzling you, they were embezzling because of what they needed, so for their own greed. If somebody had adultery, it wasn't about you, it was about them. Lack of communication most of the time is what stems that one. If somebody is greedy, it's really not about you, sloth, wrath, and so on and so forth. So don't take it personal. It's hard to do when it's your family or your loved one. What do you mean? We take it personal, so don't take it personal. How you do that? Take a step back. Become the observer. There's a gentleman who taught 4th way teaching. His name was George, do you remember? A 4th way teacher.
Yeah.
A Russian gentleman. He introduced the idea of 4th way teaching. It's going to come, Gurdjieff. George G. Gurdjieff. So, George Gurdjieff came up with the philosophy, the 4th way teachings was to be the observer. To take yourself out and observe a situation. So he used to use the example of driving a bus, like who's driving the bus? So you could be the driver of the bus, and then you can move over and be a passenger on the bus, or you could actually be somebody on the sidewalk watching the bus go by. Like there's ways that you can pull yourself out. I actually used to have an exercise that I would practice doing when I'm in the car. I would focus on my hands on the steering wheel, and then I'd see my dashboard, and then I'd go outside the car and see the hood of my car. And then I'd go outside and see if I can connect with the road that I'm on or the trees, like just to bring yourself out further. So you're an observer. The more of an observer you become, the less attached you are. So you're just kind of watching it like something's unfolding. For those of you who've ever done any kind of therapy, visual therapy, when you go back into regression, you always take it as if you're observing it, not like you're living it again. So if you're in some traumatic event, You always go back and observe the event as if you're watching a movie rather than actually being in the event. So being the observer helps me not take things personal. Number 3, the third thing I said, strive for the virtues. We know what they are. So practice purity, self-restraint, giving, integrity, composure, kindness, and humility. Practice those. We know how to do it. We know how to give. We know how to be of charity, to think purely. I'm in control of my thoughts. I don't have to think evil thoughts, even though some people want me to think evil. He's not even looking at me. I'm making fun of him, and he's not even looking at me. So, practicing the virtues. Again, the virtues are chastity, temperance, charity, diligence, forgiveness, composure, kindness, and humility. We can practice those. That will help us deal with whatever second force comes in play. I can take a step back, doing the observer part as well. Number 4, this one I think is very important too. Have a routine. Have a routine for grounding. So there should be a routine that you could deal to decompress. A stress thing, whether it's meditating, conscious breathing. Those of you who know the conscious breathing, you're aware of breathing in for a count, hold it for a count, and exhale for a count, hold it for a count. And this one you can increase. You could start with 3 counts, 5 counts, 10 counts, however long you can do that. But it's conscious breathing that brings you back into being in the present moment. When we're in the present moment, we're a little bit more calmer on that. So having a routine is very beneficial for us. Some people like to go for walks. They feel like that's something that they can decompress on. I have a new client, when he gets home, he goes for a walk before he goes into the house so he doesn't bring work home into the house with him. So having a routine is very beneficial. It doesn't have to take long either. If you're a meditator, you know how quickly you can get yourself into a very quiet space at that time. Music, I throw that in there too. Music is also very beneficial. If you have some nice music that you like to listen to help soothe you down, it doesn't even have to be meditation music. I know people who love Iron Maiden, and that calms them down. Okay, whatever works for you is fine, so that's good. Then number 5, focus on a solution. Most of the time when a second force happens, we're wrapped up in the second force. Focus on the solution. That's where we can say, okay, now what? All right, this just happened, now what? So I've had lots of practice with this. I rode along on a rig as EMT, trainee, whatnot. And when you arrive at an accident, you go into a mode. You check the pulse, check everything, make sure everything's okay, and you just do the drill. When you get into that, and this is where routine is very helpful, you just focus on the solution. Okay, this happened, now what? So, a flat tire, okay, now what? Somebody's yelling and screaming at you, okay, now what? It takes practice to do that. But by focusing on the solution, you actually are not giving energy to the second force because I'm focusing on the solution. If I'm panicking and focusing on what just happened, it's going to actually roll out of course. But if I could focus on the solution, it takes my attention into a positive manner rather than a negative manner. So I'd have a better contribution there. Number 6, this is another favorite of mine, practice gratitude. I love gratitude. I practice this every day. Practice gratitude, somebody told me today, look for the silver lining. I haven't heard that in a long time, but that's really what you do. Always look for the silver lining. There's always something positive, and no matter what occurs, there's always something positive. You might have a struggle with this. Actually, I had a pretty good conversation with my dad a couple of days ago. He was talking about forgiveness and focusing on the positive things. And he said, I could do that, but I have a really hard time with people like Hitler. How do I find something positive with Hitler? How do I find something positive with the terrorists? So I talked to him a little bit about that and said, Dad, it is a little harder, but think about this. When Hitler came about, have we had another Hitler since then? No, we're more conscious and aware of that. We try not to let somebody. Did he make a betterment for the economy in Germany? At first he did, absolutely. The economy in Germany went up from that. So there's some value, not saying we want everyone to turn into a Hitler, but there's value. So focusing on the value, being grateful. I always think about gratitude. Those of you who remember the movie that we play in Omega 1, Benny's Choice, one of my favorite lines, he said, the guy said, "Are you sad?" And he said, "No, I know there's people who have worse lives than me, and I'm grateful for what I'm given. Somebody had to be Benny." I mean, what a great line coming from a 15-year-old kid. So that's all about gratitude. I mean, this kid is dying, And he's grateful that he had an opportunity to live. To me, I think gratitude is fantastic to deal with a second force. And number 7, the last thing, and of course these aren't any particular order, but the last one I thought about is don't catastrophize. When we catastrophize, we make it so much worse. Oh my gosh, the sky is falling, the Henny Penny thing, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. We make it worse than what it really is. It's a car accident, oh my gosh, I'm never gonna do this. So my daughter was in her first car accident. Oh my gosh, the insurance is gonna go up, I'm never gonna be able to drive again. I mean, she's like out in the future. Come on back here, honey. Let's just deal with one thing at a time. But when we catastrophize, we actually increase the stress level and actually can increase the second forces as well. So when I think about these things, again, the 7 things that I came up with is remove emotion, and we have to have control of our emotion. Then don't take things personal. Strive to live the virtues that we already mentioned. Having a routine, very beneficial. Focusing on a solution instead of the problem, we focus on the solution. Practicing gratitude, and of course, don't catastrophize. What I was thinking about this, if anyone's ever heard of Rollo May, he's actually a very good, I think he was a sociologist, but he has some really great quotes that we use. I remember this one quote that he had, it's called, we call it human freedom, but I don't think that's what he called it. It says, human freedom involves our capacity to pause between stimulus and response. So first force happens, first force going, second force happens. So stimulus and response, pause. As soon as the second force happens, pause. And he says, in that pause, we choose which response we want to put our weight to. So I have an action, I'm going one way, second force says, and then I decide what do I want to do. In that moment, I pause and say, what do I want to do? Once I make that choice, then I throw my weight into it. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. The capacity to create ourselves based upon this freedom, and it is a freedom. I actually get to choose what I want to do. That's freedom. So is based upon this freedom is inseparable from consciousness or self-awareness. I believe that to be true. Conscious, I have to be conscious in order to say, well, am I going to go do this or am I going to do that? I have to be conscious in order to say, pause. Okay, pause. I often say, which I've been aware that I can't really say this anymore, I say, it's okay, and it comes across as me saying, hey, it's okay. That's not what I mean. It's okay is what I'm really trying to say is let's breathe. We're going to be fine right now, let's just breathe. I'm not condoning or accepting what you've done, but when I say it's okay, people think I'm saying, oh, don't worry about it, and that's not what I mean. So I'm trying to change that verbiage that I use. But what I usually want to do is calm down, take a breath, just take a breath. Just take a breath. That's all we need. Just take a breath. I know that in my experience has been, in some of the experiences that I've had, my experience has been, I'm usually the calm one. I'm the big observer. Due to my childhood, I'm really good at looking around, making sure I'm aware of my surroundings, except when I'm standing on a dock, coming off a 3rd shift. But I'm really calm. I like to be calm. And so I feel that the practicing of the virtues helps me in that manner. So I deal with second force differently than some other people that I have in my family. My family deals with it a little bit more differently. Lots of drama. I don't like drama. I don't see the need for drama, and drama usually is emotionally based. It's he said, she said, my opinion, your opinion. Why? And so I know that there's times where people want you to feel, well, that's my enemy, you have to hate them because I hate them. I don't have that within me. I can't choose to dislike somebody just because you dislike them. That's just not part of me. And I think some people probably feel the same way, that it's not part of you. You can't hate someone just because you're required to hate someone. It's a little awkward and difficult. I actually did have this experience. I had this boyfriend that I had in college, and he broke up with me, and so my next boyfriend was friends with him, and they're hanging out. I'm like, what are you doing? Hey, you can't hang out with him. He broke up with me. He broke my heart. What are you doing? And we had this big, huge blowout because he was hanging out with my ex-boyfriend. And he looked at me and he said, but he hasn't done anything to me. I'm like, but I'm your girlfriend. What the heck is wrong with you? I mean, it was just one of those upsetting things. And that's when I got it. I realized I shouldn't be upset with him. If he's friends with him before I started dating him, why should I expect them to hate each other just because I want you to? It was a hard lesson. I really struggled. It was a semester. It took me a full semester to actually get over that. And every time he'd say, I'm going to go hang out with so-and-so, I'm like, okay, I'm not coming. And then at the end of the semester, I actually was able to go out with both of them and not have any upset. Because then I was like, oh, I ended up with a better boyfriend, so hey, it's okay. And then it kind of been like, in your face, look who I got, which really wasn't the way you should do it. But I did get over it. And I, like I said, it was the first taste that I had. How can I expect someone to hate someone just because I do? And I've never done that since. Then that was, I think I was 18 when I had that experience, 18 or 19. So I'm glad I had that experience. That would be a second force, kind of emotional, like, why are you hanging out with him? Betrayal. And, well, it wasn't betrayal. It wasn't any of that. In my head, I created a story that really didn't exist. So that's what I really wanted to present for us tonight, was the idea of overcoming the second forces. There are ways that we can prepare ourselves. Again, this is aside from the natural catastrophes that we have no control over. We don't know what's going to happen. But when it comes to emotional things, or people that were personal, physical objects, our family especially, or our work relationships, we certainly can have some control over that. So the next time you find yourself getting and seeing red, there are certain things that we can do to prevent that from happening. Any questions before I close us off tonight? Any comments? Concerns? Alrighty then. Well, thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you all for showing up this evening on Facebook. Look forward to seeing you all on July 3rd, which will be our next Monday night workshop. So have a good evening, drive safely, and I will talk to you then. Bye now. Bye now.